Well, good evening. I'm just checking audio at the moment. I had a bit of a challenge before with different audio and whether or not it was too loud or it was too quiet, and Will was too quiet or mine was too loud or vice versa. So if there's any comments, please do very quickly just let me know if something is too loud and we can get into it. So I've got a really interesting guest this evening. And we'll probably discuss it a little bit further into the show. But I remember doing a search for how to photograph cocktails, and I had no idea how to photograph. In fact, I'd never photographed food ever, other than my other half's bakery, which you've probably seen out there. But I've never really photographed any kind of food or drink at all. And I was searching, and every single shot that kept popping up was this guy called Will Stanley. It's like, why am I seeing his shots? What is that? Anyway, so I started doing a bit of research, and then I sort of followed him on Instagram, and then I followed him on Twitter, and then all of a sudden I realized I actually started to stalk the guy. And that was looking a bit dodgy, but it just so happened that we started communicating. I was sort of, commenting on his shots and saying it's really good. I think it's fantastic, great work, and vice versa. And I could see the sort of lenses he was using. And without going too much of it as a geek out, we sort of made a connection. And then oddly, out of the blue, I believe he got and he'll correct me, I'm sure, but he was doing the Pub in the Park trail, which I'd worked on on a press side of it the previous year for locally, and was doing exactly the same thing for last year's, and he was covering it. So I said, well, look, why don't we meet up and have a chat? And it's two professionals, different styles, and why don't we just meet up and say hello? And sure enough, so we did. And since then, we've kept in touch, and we talk to each other about things, and it's been really cool. So I mean, he's comes from a different background. He's a pure food photographer and a filmmaker, and he works for a number of leading brands across the United Kingdom. He has been freelance since finishing university 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Just shows you how old we are. Well, old I am, rather. He's much more sprightly than I am. And in that time, he's gone from a sort of jack-of-all-trades photographer to the sort of guy who's really focusing specifically in the hospitality industry, and namely food and drink. He's been taking photos and making films since he was a child, but he's been working in a restaurant since his teenage years, and that really sort of kick-started his passion and his love for food. In more recent years, he's combined all these creative ingredients, see what I did there, to create a job for himself, which is the way all freelancers do it, and one that he loves doing every single day. So it is with mutual creative and professional respect to be quite proud to introduce Will Stanley. Will, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. Hello, Jonathan.
Right, I'm hoping your levels are going to be all right there. I'm just going to add a little bit of a boost to yours just in case.
Okay.
So I'm going to cut straight into it, really. So when did you know that photography was going to be your thing? I know you wanted to do it as a child, but there must have been a point where you think, hang on a minute, this is it. I really like this. When just talk about that.
Yeah,
describe how that was.
To be fair, there is actually a moment, and I can remember it quite clearly, and I don't know why it sticks in my head, but it does. And I was on holiday, I think in Barbados it was, on one of the more luxurious holidays that we went on as a child. And yeah, we were just wandering around in one of the rainforests, and I had like a disposable camera as you do. I think my dad had bought me one to use, and I loved it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And not that I took any decent pictures back then, because I was about 11 or 12, but it was quite eye-opening. It got me into it, and as soon as I got home, I then pestered my parents to get me a proper camera, a digital camera, and that's where it took off, really. I mean, I think that was probably like a long way before I thought it would be a career, but it was early days, and I think that's the moment that I knew that I was really into it. So
what was you must have been, that deck of shots, there must have been one that goes, this is it. I like this picture. Can you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was. I'd taken it. We went to see a cricket game. We went to see the West Indies play someone. It wasn't England, but there was a cricket game going on, and I've always, like my dad, we've always been mad into cricket. So we went, and I took my camera and took some pictures of the game. And obviously, didn't have quite the 600mm telephoto lens that you'll see on the boundary ropes of most of today's cricket games, but. Took a few pictures and enjoyed it, and that sort of informed what became my first love in photography, which was photojournalism, and that was sort of one of the first jobs that I could really, that I really thought I'd end up going into.
Okay, so we'll take from that. So did you went to university to study? I'm assuming you studied photography there, or did you study another sort of like something else? What was it you studied?
The course was cinema and photography, so it was a bit of both, film, video work, and photography. But it was more theoretical than it was practical. So there was a lot of like studying about film theory, and at the time I loved it. I was mad for it. I really enjoyed it, going into all sorts of weird, like psychoanalysis and looking into Freud and how that plays into film theory. So it was good. It was good fun at the time, but whilst at uni there was a lot of like, you're encouraged to go outside the course and do your own thing and find your own practical work, which was good in a way, because I think, like I say, the course was very much essays, and needed a bit of camera work to just to get some experience, really.
So where did you study? Where was your sort of point of study?
In Leeds, at Leeds University, yeah. So I spent 3 years there and then stayed on to do a part-time master's. But once I'd started doing the master's, I started taking on more work on it in a freelance basis, and gradually the master's petered out and the freelance work came in and started to come in thick and fast. So and since then it's been pretty good. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that then leads us very nicely onto our next question. So, what was the first job you did? As in, the first job you picked up the camera and you got that first validatory paycheck. What was the job? Tell me about that job.
That was. When I was about 16 or 17, I had some work experience with a local paper, and I'd go along with their photographer at the time to photograph sort of rugby fixtures and football fixtures and in the summer cricket on a Saturday, and it was great. And very occasionally my photo would get in the paper, which felt like the best thing in the world. Bloody hell, it's all kicking off. But yeah, there were a couple of occasions where he couldn't attend, so I'd actually have to, cover the match myself, and I started getting paid to do maybe like 30 match or 30 quid, 40 quid for an afternoon, and at the time that was the big bucks, and I thought, bloody hell, this is me sorted. So that was that. I mean, the reason I joined the paper on work experience is because I was obsessed with photojournalism. It was, for me, it was the career that I wanted to go down into. I was really into sports photography, and also really interested in war photography at the time as well. And so, that was the job that for many years, I really, really wanted. So the first actual paid job I had was with the local paper, which used to get published once a week. And if I was lucky, I'd get a photo in it.
Well, I think that numerous photographers owe their careers to local journalism. I recorded a podcast last week, and we spoke to a number of media people who are specifically engaged in communication media and namely journalism, and every single one of them, including the some of the senior editors we spoke to, every single one of them has had a grounding in localized journalism, and the thing with that is that is the sort of the foundation for things. So I didn't know that was your sort of background with that, which is really interesting. I mean, the first sort of, I mean, I had one or two paid jobs, but the first shot I took when I saw it in the paper, and it was with I can't remember, George Walton. You won't know the guy, but he was the local mayor, and he was operating a defibrillator that had been put in the part of the town, and I had a really very basic camera, and I put it out. I was asked because one of the shooters couldn't get there, and I took the shot, and I literally walked to the Knutsford Guardian, which is literally next door to the courthouse.
Oh,
and I gave him the shot.
Yeah.
And the next week it was like the third page, and so that moment that you had with the rugby. I absolutely get it, and I think it's critical. I think that the fact that's one of the reasons. I mean, now I actually support the local paper. I don't ever charge for a single photo, because they're running out of shooters, they're running out of money, and the local community needs they need the stories. You know, you got small stories. Anyway, I'm waffling now. I shall save my garbage.
I mean, just to go on what you touched on there, I think soon after I went to uni and hence stopped working with the paper, I think they ended up getting rid of their staff photographer because there was a massive round of pay cuts, and sadly it's one of the first things to go, and there are fewer and fewer staff photographers with newspapers, even national ones these days. So it's a shame. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's difficult, and I know there's probably with what's happening. Not want to dwell on the subject, but what's happening at the moment, that is not going to abate. I think there may well be some further slicing there, which would be a shame. Local paper is critical. As a country, we have an aging population who, thanks to sort of COVID, is now much more technologically switched on, but they still like a hard copy and see things. And it is actually nice when you see your stuff in the paper and it's in print. I still buy it, even though my photos aren't in it. So it's good. It's important. Right. Okay. Need to get back on track. So. As far as press, you got into press. So what other sort of shoots did you do? What sort of things were you up to at the time? What else did you get into?
I mean, it's probably I mean, photographically speaking, not a lot else apart from personal stuff and trying new things, and there wouldn't be a day go by where I didn't take a good few pictures and try new things out. So. But in terms of work and earning money, like I started working in a restaurant, which was this, I think it was a Michelin-starred restaurant. I've forgotten now. It's called the Angel Inn at Hetton. I started working there when I was about 16 or 17, and that place, although I was just working as a waiter, obviously, but it really opened my eyes to something I hadn't really been exposed to, essentially the food and drink world and fine dining and fine wine and all of this, and I loved it. I was captivated by it, almost to the extent that I didn't go to uni, and I stayed on. I was offered, and finally I said no, and I thought, no, I've got to go to uni and pursue this. So I'm glad I did, obviously, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I think. And I had a spell of working in a restaurant whilst I was at uni as well, in Leeds. That was Craft House, who are now one of my main clients, and they were my first food photography clients. So it was kind of, I spent a lot of time when I was at uni trying to, like how you mentioned in the intro, how I felt like I was a bit of a jack of all trades sort of photographer. I did lots of work that I didn't really enjoy and took on just because it paid my bills but it wasn't really getting me out of bed in the morning. But I started doing food photography and I loved it. And I sort of had this realization, why have I not thought of this sooner? Like I'm obsessed with food and drink and restaurants and the hospitality industry as a whole. And, I want to make a living out of photography. So, that was the moment where I thought, this will have to work.
Nice. No, I like that. It's always force majeure, but wanted to, because as you said, you ended up creating the job that you love doing, and I think that's really quite that's quite important. I think that so when was your first key break in hospitality? When did the first the first job for hospitality and what you're doing? When did it come in?
The first one was oh gosh, I don't know actually. It's a hard one. I think
There's been so many.
I mean, there's a Japanese restaurant in Leeds called Isho, which only opened a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, possibly even more recent than that. And that was the first one for whom I made a restaurant video. And I've made lots of videos for different clients before that, and it'd been good fun. But that video was quite different, I guess. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and tried a few new things with it, and that took off, and I got a lot of work from that video from loads of different restaurants across the country. So that was quite good. But I've been doing food photography for a couple of years before that, and I don't think there's one particular shoot or moment that it all started to happen, but I did a lot of free work, contacted a lot of restaurants and said, just please let me come and shoot your food. You don't have to pay me. I just want to come and do it. And I think that probably helped, because it just got my name out there a bit, and obviously gave me some experience. I mean, Instagram has this horrible feature where it says, "Hey, look at this picture you took 4 years ago," and it'll show this dish on a floor with like terrible lighting, and my God, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore.
But it's interesting to see your historical work when there's comparisons like that, because you can see where you go. I think that every single photographer, and with Mark Williamson, who was on the previous show, he said, you're always constantly trying to improve the work you're doing. You're constantly trying to better what you're doing. And I think that is exactly that. So although sometimes it's a bit of a cringe-worthy moment when a photo, it's like, oh my God, I actually got paid for that. Oh God, really? You feel guilty. You want to go back to the client and say, look, I'm really sorry about that. But maybe can I come and shoot this for you? What you said there about going around asking people who for work and doing quite a lot for free. Would you say that is something you'd recommend that people should be doing to cut the teeth?
Yeah, I'd wholeheartedly recommend it. I think there's too much having spoken to many photographers, not necessarily in a personal capacity, but maybe over Facebook about it. Like, there's so much, people have such a big ego about their work. Maybe not ego, that's not the right word, but like a protectiveness about it. Like, this is my professional work. I should be paid for it. And I think that's fair to an extent, but you're not going to get paid for it unless people have seen it, unless people know of you, or have seen your work before. And I think the advantage leveraged by doing work for free is, it has many upsides. I mean, like I say, it gets your name out there. It gives some good, you already strike a good relationship with the client straight off the bat. So yeah, I think people should, if you're starting out in photography, definitely get about pay. Can obviously, like I say, I worked in restaurants a lot to help, and just get as much work done under your belt as you can, and things should start moving if you're half decent at what you do.
I think that's sage advice there. I think a lot. I mean, it's something. Work experience is critical, but actually, once you start when people start to see your work, that's and get it and understand, sort of the caliber of or the kind of style of work, and they buy into that, then it can domino. So, but I like the idea about getting in there and trying it out. It's almost like paid work experience or unpaid. You're paying for your own experience, by the way.
Yeah, and I think in this day and age, it's all the more important with social media and putting content out there. You need that content, and if you want to advertise yourself as whether it's a food photographer like me or a wedding photographer or whatever niche, you need that body of work to be able to show people. So if it means doing it for free, I think it's well worth it in the early days.
Yeah, I think there's I think it's a fine line. I think what I probably, if anyone was listening, I'd certainly know your worth at certain points, because
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
for creatives. It's very easy to keep doing stuff on literally hand to mouth, working for burgers and a few things. And
yeah.
there comes a point where you now have
Definitely. Yeah,
worth and value, and you've got to really start billing for that. You can't just there's a lot of creative. The creative industry is the worst for it. It's
it is. Yeah,
brutalized
yeah.
industry,
You're right. Yeah,
and I think that it's interesting actually. But knowing your worth, and it's knowing that point where at least your second or third client is already demanding a repeat shoot. You know you've
yeah.
got some value.
Absolutely.
You're
Oh
in.
yeah,
You're in.
yeah, 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 yeah. Definitely.
So
Any repeat business, that's when you start charging because obviously they like your stuff. Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably one of the hardest things that I've slowly learned to do is knowing your worth and not feeling bad about charging what you think is a fair price for what you do. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to be met with a yeah, sure, no problem. But obviously, you're going to get that one time that kicks you back a bit when they say, oh, that seems a bit steep. But it's inevitable. It's just part of the process.
yeah, I think it's having. I think dictating your rate is the first thing. I think
Yeah,
then moving on to increasing your rate
yeah,
is probably the next biggest leap. Is how you
yeah,
change your
yeah.
rate. I know we're going slightly off piece where I need to be, but I know there'll be people wanting to probably know about this. Um, but I
Yeah, it is.
think that
It's a hard one.
it was actually, I think it wasn't the Institute of Directors. I went to a lecture about business development, business growth, and how to increase your profits, and it did actually sound like a real cheese bag event. And it's like how to make more money and increase your
Yeah,
profit
yeah,
by and it's like, oh
yeah.
really? But actually, the attendees and the speakers were brilliant. It was just a lot of people who were a bit greedy who were there, like, oh yeah, how can I make more cash?
Oh, okay, okay.
And but the advice was just you know just add 10% for your next client. Just add a 10%
Yeah,
uplift. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, let's try that, and then leave that for your new clients, and then explain to your previous clients that you're going to be bringing your rate in, and obviously you need to work out how to protect that and be careful with it because you don't want to lose your existing clients.
absolutely. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
year on year, you increase your rate steadily because ultimately you also need to invest in new gear because the more gear you buy, the better quality the gear, the better
yeah.
quality the end result.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I do invest, as people know. I do actually, I do quite heavily invest. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is get stuck into the slideshow. So I know there's been a bit of break in transmission, so I watched it sort of coming in and out slightly on the thing, but I'm gonna go straight into the slideshow anyway. So there's no music. So I was actually gonna do like a really cheesy Muzak affair, but it's like a washing machine, a tumble dryer. But I thought that's just rubbish. So we're just gonna go straight into it. So we're gonna loosely just do a very quick narrative on each one of these shots. I don't want to sort of make it like okay, photo number one, we've got a picture of something. So I mean, I'll be honest. I think this shot and similar shots like it were the ones that got my attention and certainly put Will Stanley on the map for me. And I thought, right, how has he shot that? What has he used? He's used what lens has he used? Has he used this? How's he? It's lit. Is it lit over? I just didn't get it. But what I did want to do is want to eat the bloody thing off the screen. That was the first thing that really came to mind. So where was this one shot? And just describe this dish to me.
Which one was this? Sorry.
Sorry. Yes. Slide one. So Will, sorry, I must explain to the audience. Will can't see the presentation. He can only see my face with a
Oh,
green
yeah,
background.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, that's my bad. That's my bad. Yeah, yeah,
no. It's all right. It's
yeah.
okay. It's okay.
I'm going to
It's
load
only
it up right
live,
now.
Will. So
I
don't sweat it.
completely forgot that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, slide one.
Slide one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was from Craft House, the restaurant I mentioned when I was talking about how I got started. They were my first food client, and the restaurant that I worked with as a waiter throughout uni. So, I mean, this shot was taken relatively recently. I think about a year or two ago, maybe. But yeah. To be fair, it's probably one of my favorite shots that I've done there. The dish was yeah, I mean, knockout, very, very craft house like. Yeah, fillet steak with some foie gras on top. It's pretty decadent, and the surroundings are always lovely. The plates are always great. It's a lovely place to shoot. In terms of lighting, if you want to know like how it was shot, I can't remember.
Well, don't give too many secrets away, Will. Let's be honest. This is
Trying
your
to,
trademark, but
I
give
think
something away.
yeah,
Not
yeah, yeah.
everything.
I mean, I use very different lighting on each shoots, really. On each shoot, sorry. Sometimes I use on camera flash, and sometimes I use bigger sort of studio lights. It really depends. In Craft House, I do usually it's a bit tight, so I do usually just use an on-camera flash, bounce it. There's a lot of white walls and white ceilings, which helps. So it's really easy in Craft House to get the lighting nailed. You go to some restaurants and it's, you walk in and you think, heck, right, here we go. But Craft House isn't one of them. It's got massive windows and it's pretty much all white and grey. It's lovely. So yeah, the lighting for this shot was easy to know how I wanted it to look and how to get it to come out that way.
Got it. Yeah, it's. I think the crockery is wonderful. That knife,
Yeah.
a beautiful gnarled handled knife. It's a nice sales. It sells the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
nature
yeah.
of the restaurant. Did you? Is that? It looks like there's some quite beefy vignetting going on there. Was that post or
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah, I think part of the reason for that is because I think the table was creeping out of shot, and I think yeah, it just wanted it really. I wouldn't usually. I think generally speaking, that is probably one of my heavier edited images. Full stop. It's got a lot going on, but yeah, I think the vignetting. I guess I just wanted to draw the eye in. Not that it needs it, but
Nothing wrong with a bit of Photoshop technique. It is,
yeah,
but it's very insta glorious. That it's. I can see
yeah,
it
yeah.
being very very well liked on
These sorts of
social.
posts do when it's like a juicy steak or a nice burger or a pizza. They're easy ones to get good engagement.
Yeah, definitely. Right, talking of pizza. Now, I've
Yeah,
got the reason why I've taken two shots, I put these two shots side by side, is just angle and technique. So they do both shots tell a different story. One is more about intimacy, and the other one is a bit more like a broader image. So it's
yeah.
just talk me through these two shots.
That's a good way of looking at it, and yeah. That's a good insight. I mean, I pizza, you just have to shoot it top down. It just looks awesome. And for me, I think my preferred shot here is the one on the left, that top down one, just because I think it does look so appetizing. It looks like you kind of there, and I guess the classic 45-degree angle, as it's called, that one where you're looking down onto something. The image on the right there. It probably less suited to pizza because pizza's so wide and so flat, but at the same time, it just looked nice, and I thought I could probably do with both. We're shooting digital now, not films, so why not?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's funny you should say that. There's a friend of mine, Rachel Bishop. She's actually she's starting to get more and more into film production, and
Yeah.
she's a marketeer. And I'll do a shoot with her, and she will say, "Have you got another one of the same but slightly different?" And it's that constancy of shooting and overshooting, because you'll know actually a slight move, it could be a millimeter, actually all of a sudden sells a different story, and then back. And you may have 20 of those shots in a film strip. Let me just go back to a slightly different angle. You may have 20 of those shots in a film strip, but you can detect the ones that are right. I think actually that's okay, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's where agencies come along and get really quite irritated, because you go, here's 5,000 giga squads of photos. Enjoy that. It's like, I just want the one shot. It's like, yeah, but that one there, and there's this one. But actually, if you look at it this way, that would work in that. And actually, they're not interested. But as photographers, we can't help but see those little cheeky angles. So, right, okay, I'm going to move on from the pizza shot. I've got a punch-in shot here. This is a Tanqueray shot. Tanqueray looks like Tanqueray whiskey. Tanqueray gin. Sorry, I don't really drink, so I don't drink at all. So yeah. So tell whereabouts is this one? Is this one in Leeds as well?
Yeah, this was at East 59th. which is a restaurant in Leeds with a terrace. It's in Victoria Gate, the slightly new shopping centre. It's a bit fancy. I think this was shot last summer. I think it's quite recent, and it was just a gorgeous day. I think we were actually shooting terrace interiors rather than any drinks. There was no food or drink on the brief, but when the weather's that good and all the colours are popping, you've just got to get a gin and tonic on the go. And the terrace had actually been, I think from memory, it had been sponsored or helped put up by Tanqueray. So
That's quite a common thing actually, that with the getting sponsorship for sort of bars and certainly outdoor stuff. Where it's a sense of opulence and a feeling with it as well. I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously the bottle just fits right into that sort of environment. So yeah, it was dead easy to pull off. I don't think I used any artificial light for this. I think it was just good old sunlight.
Sunlight.
Yeah, it just worked quite well. So just a quick shot of a gin and tonic, and then back to the interiors. Yeah.
Nice. So I've got two, only because I wasn't sure what I was looking at initially. We've got an overhead shot of a beautiful bowl, nicely presented glass of white wine, and then we've got what I can only describe as tacos in a bowl of popcorn.
You've hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
I mean, that's some fusion food.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. These two dishes are from different restaurants, but two of my favorite clients, and in terms of the food that they produce, it's awesome. So the one on the left is from a Turkish restaurant in London called Duralia. I'd probably only do 3 or 4 shoots there a year, so very seasonal. But it's very much a case of going down, having like the whole menu cooked, and I never leave hungry. They're lovely people, and the food is awesome. I think that was like some prawn dish cooked in coconut. It was lovely, yeah. And then on the right is much newer. It's a chef that a lot of people will have heard of, and a good mate of mine called Lee Murdoch, and he opened a restaurant in Leeds just before lockdown, actually, called Farron's, and it's I've forgotten the name of the road it's on, but it's near Cara Prior, if anyone knows where that is. But it's fantastic. It's really good food. It's all like sharing small plates, and I think that particular dish, like you say, it's tacos on a bowl of popcorn, but inside the tacos is this lovely beef tartare with all sorts of other stuff that I can't remember. But yeah, really, really nice place to shoot and cracking food. So would highly recommend it.
It certainly looks different. The one on the left, I get. The one on the right, I'm having to interpret what those flavors, what those textures and tastes would be like, let alone shoot the bloody thing.
Yeah.
But I like that. Yeah, I like the fact it's just creeping past the wine glass. It's almost revealing itself as a little surprise. Hi, look at me.
Yeah. I've always loved shooting through wine glasses, and I don't know why. Like, rather than having them in the back, having them in the foreground. Yeah, just giving a bit of depth and the bowl. Yeah. Whenever I look at this shot, it annoys me a little bit that the wine glass encroaches on the plate. But
I can see that.
That's what you're saying about, millimeter differences and
yeah, just the same thing, just slightly different. There you go, Rachel. Do you see how important it is? Anyway, right now this one I did see and I have seen for a while. It looks like bananas on peanut butter. Is that a breakfast? Is that something, or it's just the way it's presented? It's look. I'm guessing it's a sourdough. I mean, we're talking about the food here rather than the shot style, but. Again, it's an interesting.
I think that says a lot. That says a lot. This was with another fab client of mine called Gron, who are a little cafe, sort of Scandinavian vegan-friendly cafe in Roundhay, Leeds, and they're run by Matt Healy, who loads of people will have heard of, famous for being on MasterChef a couple of years ago, and has since opened a few restaurants in Leeds. This. I like this shot because it's the first shot, and I'm going to get a bit technical, a bit geeky here.
Do it.
About a year ago, I switched from using Photoshop and Lightroom, which I'd used all my life, to using Capture One, which is a bit of a lesser-known photo editing software. I thought I'd give it a go. I tried it before, not really liked it, but I thought I'd give it a second chance, and now yeah, haven't looked back. It's awesome. So this was the first shoot where I sort of hooked it up to Capture One and had a play around with it. And I think you can get a lot with the color and the tones. You know, the peanut butter looks so orange. It looks nice. And yeah, so in terms of the dish, easy enough dish to photograph. I love shooting at Gron. It's good fun.
Interesting about Capture One. I mean, I'd considered Capture One because I keep getting. In fact, right now there's a big push on to anyone who ever signed up or tried the trial. They're constantly sending it out.
Oh,
Try it again. Try it again.
I get it, and I'm paying thing, and I still get the emails saying get 20% off a subscription. But please stop sending me these.
Well, I mean, that in itself is a very interesting subject because Adobe had got wise to their overcharging mechanisms, and I think they knew they were overcharging.
Yeah.
50 quid a month is a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
Granted, it's business critical software, and it is important. But the thing is, I would never get another copy on another machine. I'd actually rather disconnect mine and then fire that one up in order to use it. Someone else could use it, and then I'll just not use it just to maximize on the license. And I think that's been a real problem, certainly at that price. But now they've actually, in fact, it was Philip Bloom. Philip Bloom made the call, and I saw it in a message, in a posting that he'd actually got in touch with Adobe and complained. It's like, what am I paying for? I can't pay for this. Premiere doesn't work. This doesn't work. That. What am I paying for? And they immediately reduced his cost. And literally 10 minutes after I read that, I went onto the chat application at Adobe and said, "Hi, I'm paying 49 quid here. What am I getting? Where's the value for money?" And sure enough, it says, "Well, sir, I tell you what, we'll do it for this instead." So they reduced the price by about 22 quid a month. So
wow. Hey, that's interesting. They're obviously a bit.
Yeah. So
well
worth it. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, Capture One's. I can't remember how much it was, but I remember it. Like you pay a one-time. Well, actually, there's a lot of different ways you can pay, but if you choose to pay a one-time fee, it's so much better value. And obviously, Capture One, I still use Adobe software for video, so there's fees there. But yeah, I think for photography, everyone should give it a go if they're into editing.
So you use Premiere for editing for video?
I do, yeah, for video, yeah.
The Crash Happy app, the world's most Crash Happy app.
It crashed on me today, which is nothing new. So.
Oh dear! Actually, I watched a video. It was Geordie at Cinecom, and he was going on and on and on about the latest build, like 14.2, I think it's a 14.3, that is actually as stable as it's ever been. I'll believe that when I'm having to.
Yeah, it's not saying much.
Yeah, exactly. It's like version 14, and it's still not quite stable.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I'm going to get back into this. So I put these two side by side because they're more wearable, and there's another wearable one that you're going to have to talk me through. So I've got a stack of glorious pancakes.
Yeah.
And which just, I just eat that morning, noon, and night.
I know. Yeah.
And then a delicious lobster, a fantastic looking lobster. Just where were these taken? And so just give me an idea of the setup of the lobster, especially.
Yeah, the one on the left, bread of the pre-shot at Grand Cafe. You can see the same marble table.
I'm afraid it just broke.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Sorry, it just you disappeared there. Just hit me with the description again of the lobster. Go for it.
The pancakes were at Gron, the same place as before. The lobster was at East 59 again, I think, actually. That Leeds rooftop restaurant. The pancakes were awesome. They were great fun to shoot. We just loaded them up higher and higher and sort of tried to see how far we could get with them, and it was good fun. I mean, Grona, very much. Usually, it's all so beautiful and quite, minimalist in a way. It's really healthy and lovely. And this was just felt like the complete opposite. Let's just chuck as much up
Indulgent.
and get loads of drizzly syrup. It was good.
No, no, no. It's
Yeah,
lovely.
the lobster shot on the right, I really love this shot. I took it years ago, but it's still one of my favorite shots, and I don't really know why. I think just the tones in it are really nice. Yeah, a similar approach really. Just let's get a lot on the table. Let's make it look like a bit of a feast. And really unusually, I shot this with a 24mm lens, which I never shoot. Like you know, you just don't use wide lenses for food unless it's really particular circumstances. So yeah, this one, I don't know why I used the lens. I think probably I just wanted to get as much in the frame as possible. But it helps. I think it makes you feel a bit closer to it rather than a bit, distanced off. So yeah, another decent shot that I like.
No, it's interesting. 20 because the 24mm. I'd only just bought that when we actually met in the physical sense. I
Oh
used
right,
that
right.
for a lot
Yeah,
of the pub and the park shops because you've got to be close. If you want that
yeah,
depth, shoot wide open, get close, and it works. And I can start to see that. I mean, I use this. In fact, the one I'm using at the moment, this lens here, this is a
yeah,
24mm. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm using this. I'm using this on the GH5. Ooh, GH5. And the EOS and the EOS are in the bag. So I'm waffling. But no, it's really lovely. That I do like that, and I can say it. It tells the story, and it looks fresh, and you just want to eat lobster. Looking at that, it's like, give me that
Yeah,
lobster.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's tasty. Right. I'm on to the next slide, and I have always, I keep looking. Apart from the shutter background, which I love, it's very street foody. But
yeah.
how the hell do you eat? Do you eat that in a bath or like surrounded by
Yeah,
people? You eat?
we actually should have included the shot of eating it, which we did shoot after this. So that's a shame. I would have been good to have those two side by side.
Wearing it.
Yeah, yeah, it was messy. This one took a few attempts to get the drips right. Obviously, treacle and ice cream generally not the easiest foods to style or predict. But this was shot with Northern Block, who I'm sure everyone will have heard of. They produce the best vegan ice cream there is, and supply it not only to customers but to a lot of restaurants like Wagamama and quite a few others as well. So they're really good guys. And we did this shoot again I think about a year ago maybe. And we'd shot a nice, some nicely styled, with just a few scoops and all pretty and everything. And then we thought, come on, let's get outside and get things.
Let's go for it. Let's get
messy. So obviously, yeah, this was just natural light, which was fine on the day. It was nice and overcast, so the perfect conditions.
Nice
and yeah, like I say, just fired a few shots off and tried to get it so that we had a couple of drips going at the same time. And then, like I say, after this, we then shot it where one of the guys just had it and just stuck it in his mouth.
It's more. It makes a proper portrait. Then it's not. It goes from food to portraiture. It's just.
It came out quite well, actually. Yeah.
Well, maybe after this, you should post it in the thread so people can. Have
I will do. I'll try to dig it out. Yeah.
Right, I've got a three spot lineup here with the cocktails. Now, I've gone to cocktails because this is where I started to get more connected with it. And as a friend of mine who I work with locally at the Mere. The Mere is this is not a plug, by the way. Just before I carry on, it's not a plug. But the Mere is a local. It's a luxury spa. It's a residence. It's a lovely place to be, and I have been working with them for a very long time on lots of food photography and events and people and all sorts. So I cover a very broad spectrum of creative work up there, and it's brilliant. And I like working with Hannah. She's pretty cool. And we do spend quite a lot of time looking at your shots, thinking, how can we get that? How do we create this? So I've got a three-way lineup there, mainly for Hannah's reason, but also just to discuss these setups, because these aren't just straightforward setups. There's, we've got some hazing and smoke in one. We've got some, it looks like some kind of ice in the other. These setups are not like, oh, let's just stick that together, get a shot, and off we go. These are more practice. Just walk me through these three shots.
Yeah, I love shooting cocktails. I really do. When you have time to actually prepare the shots. You might say again.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. I think these three are good examples because they were all shots that I had time to prepare. Quite often you're shooting on the fly, and it's a case of getting a quick shot in a few minutes, and it shows sometimes it does. But when you actually have time to set up, properly plan, think about a shot, which these three all needed, and it allows you to obviously get a better shot out of it. So the one on the left, I can't remember where it was shot. I think it was um, potentially either Angelica or Isho, both in Leeds. And yeah, just a load of fake snow, some logs, and the gin in question was Roku gin, I think, which they were trying to promote at the time. So yeah, it was a Christmas shoot, and just good fun, really. Good to get, was able to get the lighting controlled, and so that was that. The one in the middle was probably the quickest affair. It was I can't remember where it was, but the lighting in the restaurant was lovely, and it was pretty easy, to be honest, just with a bit of bounced flash to get a good shot out of it. And then on the right, yeah. I mean, one of my favourite gadgets is this atomizer spray, which is good for a couple of things. Spraying water over cocktails like this gets a nice mist, obviously. It's also good for spraying oil on foods to keep them looking moist after that steak has been sat there for 45 minutes and he's still trying to get the shot. So I think the shot on the right was a bit more set up in terms of lighting. It had, a studio light and a reflector, just to make sure you picked out all those particles. So I guess, like I say, they're good examples of when you actually have time, when you're given time to execute a shot and think through a shot properly, it does work out for the better and pays off, in my opinion.
No, it's good. I think they're great. I do like those shots. And they're solid. They're quite iconographic. They're quite solid shots. The next three batch of shots, I'm just noticing with time we're approaching 47 minutes. As I say, it would go on for a while, which is good.
Okay.
which is fine. There's still people watching, which is even better. And we have a few questions as well. I'll just drop in. We've got a couple from Simon Phillips, filmmaker. He was also in one of the other shots, the other videos. Dan Snape, who I think you may know. And Luke Spur, who've got a couple of cheeky questions, and I think they do deserve to have them aired. And then Tom McGrath, actually, which is another one. So we'll do those. We'll do those. So if you guys are still watching, just give us a few minutes. We're going to rattle through a few of these, bit of Q&A, some discussion about COVID, and then we're going to get into some questioning. So onto these three shots, we've got, I think that is some oysters. And then we've got, I think that looks like is that wrapped, a seaweed wrapped thing? I'm trying to describe the things without even.
Yeah, it's asparagus.
So I'll shut up. You describe them.
It's all good. You got oysters and asparagus in the centre, and then chicken on the right. All these are from the same restaurant. They're all from the Foundry, which is Matt Healy, as I was saying before, his flagship restaurant in Leeds city centre. It has the best concrete floor I've ever seen. It's an absolute dream to shoot on. So, I mean, all food photographers love a good surface, a good backdrop. And there it's got this lovely sort of scuffed effect. It's nice. Obviously we shot on the right. Yeah, we shot that on a table, but it's lovely food there. It's really, really good. There's a lot of attention to detail, and me and Matt work well together. Have a good understanding of the shots that we need.
Just hang on a sec. Well, we're just losing your transmission a little bit, but this is the benefit of live coverage. This is how it goes. Right. So I'll move along to the interior stuff now. The interior stuff is, this is where I kind of got stuck into things. I ended up doing. I did a lot of interior shots because I studied as interior design and architecture. I came out and I couldn't find any work, so I actually started taking photographs of interiors. For instance, when I look at interior shots, I do get it. I mean, it's like, for me, it's landscape photography. I struggle to get completely excited about it, but when you get
Yeah,
into it, you become absolutely immersed in it, and you start to look at the details, and you do get into it.
yeah,
And the thing that stands out here is that beautiful floor. Look at that magnificent floor. It's just so
yeah.
just so
I don't know.
perfect. I love it. I love it. Where was this? Where was this? Is this the one in New York, or is this elsewhere?
You want the pic the
It's the
single image the
yeah. It's the first
table.
the first of the interiors deck.
This was in York, in our side of the pond. Yeah, this was at the Grand Hotel in York. They have a restaurant called Hudson's, which is super fine dining. Only tasting menus, and it's beautiful. It's lovely. I mean interiors were. I was quite a late coming to interiors. I think it's a good comparison that you make to landscape photography. It's quite a not the most exciting genre, but
Niche.
once you get into it, it's really, really fun. And each of my interior shots is always like a composite of several other shots, and all blended together in Photoshop or whatever afterwards. So it's quite it's quite a geeky process, I guess, but and a very time consuming one. But it's good fun.
Yeah, I get that. It is. I mean, I do the last batch of shots. I did a full day photographing conference setups, and although
Yeah,
you think, crikey, how am I going to do that? By the time you start to get into the next sort of like 30 minutes of doing it, your precision and how you line things up, and you can see when a chair is out of place, and,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
become
definitely.
quite obsessed. So what initially starts out being, crikey, I need to find some inspiration from what
Yeah,
is rows of chairs and furniture. How do I do this? And then you start to get into different lenses and different angles, and
yeah,
it
absolutely. Yeah,
builds. But it's all the work in post that really makes these shots come
yeah,
together. No,
yeah.
I totally see that.
It's one of the things, comparing the original file to the end product, particularly with interior photography, is always like, what? It's always quite a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'm going to move on to the next two. It's quite spectacular. I do like the precision of these shots, and I try not to crop into them. I just left them as they are. I had them as full screeners, and I was cropping into it. And I thought, I can't do that. I can't say they're precise and really nice, and then have chopped like little bits off them just to squeeze them onto the screen for the conversation. So
Yeah.
it looks like I don't know, maybe a eighth or ninth floor, and I'm guessing the other shot is another part of the room. But just whereabouts were these?
Yeah, these were in New York. I shot these about a year ago. I was sent to New York to create a load of content for a new restaurant, which incorporated practically everything: video, photos, food, drinks, and interiors. They are both parts of the same restaurant. The one on the left is the main dining area, and the one on the right is this little cafe sort of annex they have. But they're part of a wider company called D&D, who always pour quite the budget into their restaurants. So they're always good fun to shoot when they open. It's just dead easy to get such nice, colourful, vibrant shots. But shot very wide, and I've had a lot of comments, particularly the one on the right, saying it looks like a designer's, an artistic
A render.
interpretation, like a rather than an actual photo. So I think sometimes interior photography does run the risk of going into that sort of slightly HDR look sometimes that's a bit too unrealistic. But I don't know, I like the colours, so
Yeah, I'm always reluctant to sort of start cranking up those shadows, because as soon as you
yeah,
do, you get that weird fringing, and you just
yeah,
know, and it ultimately makes more sense to just take just a bracket. For anyone who doesn't know what bracketing is, you expose low, middle, and high, or you can expose semi-low. So if you don't know what those bracketing, Google it. It's out there. There's loads of techniques on bracketing. So to bracket and then stitch it together in layers and then pull things out. That's the craft, I think. The shot is the shot, but the real craft of interior shots is the post-production work, I think. Always thought so.
yeah, definitely.
So the final shot in this deck is the same restaurant, but it's shot from a different angle, and I just like the accent at the back of the chairs. I think that's the thing that keeps that gets my attention. But the fact that each one has a table light and the exposure on that, and it's a nice shot. And you've got on the outside, you can see that building. I do recognise that building actually. I think it's
Yeah, it's quite an iconic sculpture, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's also quite heavily protected photographically. I think there are rights associated with that building.
Oh,
If I
really?
remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting.
But if you're photographing it on, on the premises or bits of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
I think there's
yeah.
something about the rights. Anyway, I may be wrong. Someone will tell me I'm wrong, or I'm right. But how did you mark the shot up? How did it sort of come about?
Yeah, I mean, this was yeah, same again, but different in that I mean, looking at this, I think I've shot it on a 50mm lens, which is unusual, I guess. You'd usually shoot super wide for interiors. So I think it just felt a bit more warm. It felt a bit more atmospheric, and I just wanted it to look like a bit more realistic, because sometimes those super wide shots, like the previous two, they can feel a bit like, you're standing in a corner, which inevitably you are, and looking at it from afar. So it's sometimes nice just to get in and create something that's maybe a bit more in line with what a guest might actually feel when they're there. So yeah, I think that was the idea for this shot. It was just a nightmare trying to get all the chairs, lined up properly. But
I can see that almost every single peak of the other sides, they're all perfectly
One's
lined
slightly
up.
out
And
of line,
yeah,
but-
there's one there slightly out of it, but it's not easy. It's not
Yeah.
easy. No, it's cool. Well, that's cool. Actually, I'm hoping people have enjoyed looking at that slide deck, because it is. It's also understanding that the fact that I have an interest in food. I do all the cooking. I've been cooking for years. A lot of people who come here and know I cook for them, and actually we turn it into a bit of a show in the kitchen where I'll just pull a couple of Ottolenghi books out, and we'll go through, pick stuff I've never made before, go and toast really expensive ingredients and get it wrong. But that's part of the journey of cooking and doing it. It is good. But then again, I've always wanted to try and photograph the stuff, and you can't do that when you've got olive oil all over it, or covered in garlic. Can someone just forget it? I'll just continue. I'll just remember this looked nice or whatever. So no, it's quite cool. Right. So I think that what I'll probably do is we'll just go and have a discussion about filmmaking, because filmmaking is evidently very different. It is photographically and positionally, it's the same, but it's moving, and it comes with a boatload more complexities to it. So when you started did you know that you wanted to do filmmaking as well as photography, or did you fall into filmmaking?
No, it was always something that I enjoyed doing and learned alongside photography growing up. It was never one or the other, really. I always wanted it to be both. And I always hoped that it would be something that I'd have a career where I was able to do both. But it is completely different. It's totally, a completely different learning curve. There's different software to learn, different techniques, and often different cameras to learn as well. So yeah, completely different ball game. But I think nowadays it probably is about 50-50, with video and photo, what I do on a daily basis. So yes, it's good fun. Yeah,
it's interesting. I do both. When I go on client shoots, I often get the request to do both. So would you mind getting some shots of this? Would you mind doing this? And that I don't know whether you have the same issue, but I have to sort of almost go through a very quick reprogramming of the mind to think, how do I need to shoot this? Because the way this shot it looks now is great as a still, or the way it looks now is great as a movie.
Yeah.
As a still, the narrative has to change, the style has to change, or maybe even some of the lighting has to change.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, people are now listening to that, so they require some sound and that drilling, or using that lift, or why is that noise? They'll stop coming in and out. All of a sudden, so the brain has to go from photographer to producer. How do you make that? Do you go through a conditioning process? How do you do it? I just go and scream into a pillow.
Yeah. In essence, that's exactly what I do. I just don't. I don't take it on. If anyone asks me to do photo and video on the same shoot, I just say I don't do it. Just because it is too difficult. There's different, like you say, so many different things going on, and you really have to be in the frame of mind for that particular discipline. For me, when I'm shooting video, everything has to be properly lined up in my head, every shot, every transition, and if anything interrupts that, I get a bit, I get a bit worried that things aren't going to look the way they should. So, I used to do that, but nowadays I just say it really isn't. It's not conducive to good quality work for either the photography or the video to do both at the same time.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to take that. I know that I've got a couple of clients watching this.
Yeah,
So, and I have always said, well, can we potentially do the shoot on another day? And because it's about, rates and day rates and things, you've got to,
yeah,
not all clients can afford to do 2 days of shooting, but
yeah,
ultimately, 2 days of shooting as separate things would end up with much higher quality individual sets of products
absolutely. Yeah,
and
yeah,
output. But sometimes I can't,
yeah.
it doesn't quite work that way.
Of course.
But hats off for the fact that you'll stand your ground on that. I think that's really good. You're also protecting your own professional integrity there, as whereas I'm evidently
Yeah.
turned into some kind of photo video beast who just gets on with it. Just whatever. Just get whatever. No, I'm not like that at all. So what? So on films, I think I've seen quite a few of your films before, and I have to say I do like your style. I like your. I can see how you've planned your shots for your
Yeah.
transitions. And for anyone not watching who doesn't understand that, it's knowing what you're going to film first, and then knowing what you're going to cut to, and how you're going to make that connection. So anyone who doesn't understand the process of transitions, it's not just stitching stuff together. If you're doing it in a production level, it means you're filming knowing how to go from one scene to another. And Will uses quite a few transitions. One called a whip transition, which is a quite a commonly known, commonly used thing, but that can only be done by knowing what that transition is going to be before you even pick up the camera. You've got to set that up, knowing I want to transition from this. Now, you may go and shoot something and shoot it 3 or 4 times with a few different types of transitions in mind, but ultimately you need to know that right at production, not at post-production, because to fix that in post, it always never looks as glossy. It never
Yeah,
does. But
yeah. I mean, I get so many messages saying, "Oh, what transitions do you use? What effects do you use in post? And where can I download them? Whose effects package do you use?" And it largely it's all done in camera. I mean, as much as I like to prepare it and think, right, this shot's going to go from here, and I'm going to do that transition by a certain movement. A lot of the time, I'm not 100% sure, and the way around that is just to almost every shot that I do, I will start it with a whip from one direction and finish it with a whip in another, so that one way or another, I have shots that can work, that can be cut between one another. So just so that I have options in the edit. But yeah, it's quite a common one. Is movement between shots. Another one that I like to use is having something come in the frame by moving the camera. So maybe it's a wall, just quickly moving behind a wall, and then you follow that movement into the next shot, and it's a new room in the hotel or a new dish or whatever. So
that's frame
it's
blocking.
yeah, frame blocking. That's it. Yeah, I never know the technical term for these things.
Hello, well, I should be using a frame blocking technique here because that's my geekery. That's just my pure geekery. I do like frame blocking. I mean, it is quite fiddly to do, but can only be done by knowing how you're going to do that in camera. There can be there's no other way unless you want to superimpose some BS over the front of it to then try and transpose the. It's always going to look crap.
Yeah,
So
that
it's
does have to be prepared in advance, like you say, doesn't it?
you got to know exactly where those scenes are because you
Yeah.
go from. It's not just about blocking from one to another. It's actually about blocking with the light. Is it going to be a dark transition? Is it going to be light? I mean, I've seen some absolute classics where people are using jibs and all sorts of things, but it's all been pre-staged and beautifully done, and I love that. I mean, but we don't want to go too geeky and off-piste here, but a lot of the scenes in Stranger Things where they're twisting, I mean, that actual how they get that angle to actually rotate. I mean, it's not just sticking the camera there and turning it. It's actually the technique of how the camera is moving. It is exceptionally complex, and I think it's the Duffer Brothers who've pioneered quite a few really, really slick techniques that are pretty cool. I like those.
Right.
Right. Do you know what? I'm going to go after all this film talk. We may as well. Should we premiere your movie? I know it's one you've done loads, but and I love this one you've sent through. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm just gonna roll VT, and we'll see
Sure.
what the viewers. And that is a good example of simple narrative filmmaking. You're in at the environment, you're in at the presentation of each of the dishes, you're in at the actual construction of the dishes, and it's telling that story. And for what we said prior is knowing those frames, it's knowing where to set that up, when to set it up, and yeah, it's good. So how many of those have you actually done?
How many videos?
Mm.
Good grief. I've no idea. Too many to recall, I think. But quite often the format is often quite similar. You know, I work with a lot of restaurants who are just opening, so they want a video like that one that just brings everything all together in a sort of, you know, a way that builds anticipation. So that's quite a common format. Or people just want, you know, even if they've been open for a while, we just want a video that tells our story. And quite often I'll couple that with a bit of an interview or voiceover from a chef or something. But usually it's the same story format that you're trying to tell. You just, you know, it's obviously just someone else's story. But yeah, obviously every restaurant's different, so there are new things to shoot every time. But in terms of the number I've done, yeah, quite a few.
So it's interesting. So it's a combination of people. So are you leading their creative? Are you leading how they should tell their story, or do they have a predefined idea of exactly what it is they want?
Quite often these days, people just say, just do your thing. Just, you know, here's a bit about us. You know, this is who we are as a restaurant, and this is what we want people to know. But other than that, just off you go and do your thing, which is a great way to work. It's how I love working. I love it when clients say that to me, because obviously it just gives me free rein to make something that not only do I think, well, I don't know, it's I guess what I think is best for the restaurant, and in a visual kind of way. So yeah.
No, it's interesting. I think the majority, it's working with agencies is slightly different because they already have a preset narrative on what needs to be creative,
Yeah,
and most of the time they've even developed a storyboard for you or a shot list.
Yeah.
Some of the corporate clients, and I'm actually on a shoot tomorrow. There's levels of trust there, where you know the client, you know the demand, you know the need, you know how they speak, you know how it is, so you're trusted to go and deliver that, and that's one end of it. And all then is this: we just need this, and we need that, and we need this, and we need some stuff for social. They trust you enough to know how to deliver that, and it's a lovely position to be in.
Yeah.
It's also one that you know is, in a lot of senses, can be open to abuse for the other people with either overbilling or just behaviour and delinquency on a job. But I think that it's a question of knowing your client. So it's interesting that you actually get more of a free rein, which is nice. Actually, I like that. That's good. Yeah. I'm slightly jealous. That's good. So I'm going to get very briefly onto lockdown opportunities. So what have you been during lockdown, have you been able to go and learn something new or research something? Is there anything that's positive that's come out of lockdown for you?
Um, that's a good question. I think I've had chance to do a lot of shoots from home. Well, I say have had chance to, I mean, out of sheer necessity, more than I would usually do. So, yeah, I think I've got a nice setup at home now. I've got a routine, a way of shooting. I've got quite a lot of product shoots to do. So that's been good. It's obviously limited what I can do here, but it's yeah, it's been fun sort of learning and playing around with studio equipment that I wouldn't usually use every day, day in, day out. So it's been interesting. Yeah, the first couple of weeks were quite weird. I'm not going to lie, they were quite tough mentally. I think I've been perpetually busy for a good few years now, and I'm used to being booked up a few weeks or months in advance, and to have my order book just completely scratched was quite a shock. So. Yeah, it's been a bit, it was funny for a few weeks, but since then work has slowly started coming back in, and I'm quite busy now, but missing my restaurants big time. Not doing
that free food.
It's yeah, exactly.
I mean, I did actually see. I was going to say actually, Will, you've I can see it in your face. You've lost a bit of weight. You're obviously not doing many food shoots.
Yeah, look, my partner said that as well. Yeah, I think you go from a couple of shoots a day where you're just nibbling and grazing, to not doing any. I think my body's thanking me.
Yeah, I think the last shoot I did up at Mere was the most food heady. I think I ended up heading into a food coma at one point because of the amount of caramel cubes and ice cream and about 4 desserts. I've just eaten. Why have I eaten 4 desserts? I didn't need to eat 4 desserts.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Why have I eaten 4 desserts? Because they're so nice, and the thing is, you want to eat them before they completely collapse or melt away.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, you just it sharpens your game up. You make sure you get the shots. Get the shot. So
yeah.
No, it's terrible. Right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go into some questions. We've got a few from people.
Okay.
From the last one, and it leads on from what I was talking about before. Is a question from Mark, who was asking how are you coping with the COVID situation? Does he have any work at present? You've answered some of that. And does he envisage any change in future practices?
How am I coping with lockdown? Yeah, I guess I've answered that. In terms of the future state of the industry and what have you, I mean, I can only really speak for the hospitality industry and only know what I know about that. But I think it's super hard to predict. I think it's going to be very different. I think that there's going to be obviously a big economic effect, and a lot of businesses are struggling, and some have gone out of business as well. So it's obviously a very difficult time. But I've seen a lot of chefs doing great things as well. A lot of adaptation to whatever this new normal is, to use that awful phrase. But sorry, strike one.
Really? Oh. I should have said, right, under no circumstances use new normal. And carry on. Sorry.
Inverted commas. I feel like...
Yeah, that's the new normal.
Sorry. Yeah. So a lot of places seem to be adapting, but I don't know. Everything's so uncertain. I'm really not sure. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I have one shoot. I did one shoot 2 weeks ago where it's fully PPE'd up.
Yeah.
And masks. I think. I sent you a.
Oh, you did. Yeah.
A message whilst I was on set, and my God, it was a hot day anyway. Really warm. There was no air conditioning in the venue. There was nobody there, and you're having to clean everything down before anyone gets in there. Then you have to. I handed them a microphone that's been disinfected, completely blitzed with isopropanol. They're then trying to teach them how to mic themselves up and trying to monitor the audio, and it was hard. I tell you what, it was hard going. I mean, I'm not complaining because there's doing that, then there's what people are doing frontline. It's
of course, yeah. I mean, I've had a few where I've had to wear a mask for a matter of hours, and I've hated it. It's been horrible. But then you think people are wearing them for like 12 hours a day more. So puts it in perspective, like you say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. Okay, I have got. Okay, I've got one. Simon Phillips, who was on last time. I'm going to post this on the thing. Hi guys, just joined. How did Will's clients react from going from cheap or free to paid?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think a mutual understanding and respect, and I think I touched on this if you approach it with the right attitude and like what you were saying, you've got to know your worth. I very rarely, if someone asks me to do a free shoot, absolutely not. But if I approach them and offering it for free, then you've got the upside there. You're the one with the leverage. So I think that kickstarts a good relationship, and hopefully, if you get on well with them and you do some good work for them, it should be, at least it has been for me in most cases, like a reasonably smooth transition to then start saying, hey, look, you've enjoyed the benefits of my work. I feel like I'm bringing you value. So, here's my day rate, or however you want to phrase it.
Okay, there you go, Simon. I hope that answers your question. He did post another question, but I'm not going to read that out because I think that's one for off the line. It's a very cheeky question about rates, but I'm sure he'll reach out. Simon's a professional filmmaker, Netflix shooter, extra, and his list of accolades go on. So it may be worth having an offline chat with Will. Just a couple of comments. Oh yeah, actually, I'll tell you what. Let's do a couple of these. Are obviously your chums or people you know.
Right. Okay.
So Tom McGrath. I'll post that one in there. Who was your favourite person to work with at Craft House? Dan Snape, Luke Spur. So you're being put on the spot here. So I thought I'd just stick it in for the sake of it. Only because they may be watching or they may have buggered off.
I can't choose favourites, lads. Yeah, those are three guys from my days at Craft House. I couldn't possibly choose favourites. You all had your merits. I'm going to be diplomatic.
Nicely done. Just a comment here from Kim. She says, creativity, it's difficulty being creative. And when we're talking about getting paid and making the migration between paid and between free and paid, and also the fact that as creatives we do get well, we're not anymore. As you go up the sort of the food chain, as to want of a better phrase, that sort of does change, and you become wizened to when you know you're not going to get paid. You sort of sniff out the clients that think you have no money for this, or I can do it for this, but it's got to be paid up front. And you realise when you're in that sort of territory, it's time to get out of that territory and try and find where people are picking up the phone and just booking you straight, which is It's how it's been for. Well, likewise for you, it's been the same for a few years. It's been quite a few years for me. Well, that's good. Right. Okay, I've got another one here. It's obviously an in joke, and obviously you know this person, and I'll give it some airtime. So this is Dan Snape, who gave you the best handshake out of Luke Spur or Tom McGrath. So obviously it's slightly in there. So if it's a bit rude, don't say anything.
I'm gonna go Tom McGrath on that. I'm sorry, Luke. Tom McGrath has a handshake like no other man. I'm gonna have to go with Tom on that one.
Oh right. I've got another one here. Will Smith. I don't know if you know Will Smith. I don't know Will Smith, but Will Smith. Is it true that some of the cocktails are in fact not cocktails and just glasses of tonic?
Yeah, that is. Yeah. As I disclosed. To much controversy on my Instagram recently, yes. Quite often the cocktails are completely fake. A gin and tonic is not likely to have any gin in it, and cocktails can quite often just be a bit of juice thrown together. So all the better when there's a bit of gin in there. But quite often they're non-alcoholic.
And you're not driving home, of course.
Well,
So. I think, to be honest, Will, we've come to the end of the Q&A. There's a few more. I was hoping we'd have a few more there, but there's been quite a few that's quite cool. Another one from Kim, which is great ceramics, great food, great lighting and textures. And again, that's an equinoxal process where they are fusing together. Because obviously the chefs aren't just you're not just creating a plate of food, they're creating a plate of food to look good on a specific plate that no doubt they've gone through
Yes.
catalogs and
Yeah,
chosen that. There's a deeper process. It's not just about creating the dish. It's choosing the dish for
yeah,
the food to go on.
yeah, yeah. I think there has to be an understanding from plate to picture, really. What the quite often the I'll help a chef. Well, not help a chef, but I wouldn't want to say that. But there's a conversation between chef and I about what plate should be used. What plate's going to shoot the best for a particular dish. So yeah, it has to be to get the best shot. You have to think of all these things, really.
No, it's end to end. It's like everything. It's always
Yeah,
end to end.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm going to go very quickly onto some gear because there's no more questions.
Okay, cool.
Cameras. I know what you shoot on. What do you shoot on?
I shoot on this thing here, the Canon 1DX Mark II, which I've had since it came out, so probably three or 4 years now. Which is great it's good for photo and video, which is why I got it, really, because quite often I'm doing a bit of both, and it's perfect, really. It's a decent bit of kit. I've always been a fan of using. Huh?
You're going to get the Mark III?
No, I'm not. No, I was really disappointed by the Mark III. There's just not a lot to it apart from shooting. I think it shoots 6K and it shoots 4K RAW, stuff like that. That for me, I don't use it. I occasionally shoot in 4K, but most of the time I'm shooting in super slow mo at 1080. So it, just doesn't have enough for me. Not for like $4,500 or whatever it'll cost. So yeah.
So are you going to join me and go mirrorless then?
Yeah, I knew that would be your next question. I'm tempted mainly because I'm so annoyed that Canon keep releasing such good lenses for this new format and just neglecting their old EF faithfuls. So so I think, to be honest, that's more likely, far more likely than me upgrading to a Mark III. Yeah.
Well, I think that I know they've just released a super zoom as well on the new RF mount. I tell you what, the biggest problem I've got is I shoot off the C200, and the C200 is a native EF mount.
Yeah.
They would have to release an adapter that goes from EF to R or RF to EF to mount that onto there. But I know there's an issue with the flange distances. And that is a real concern for me because I've got a bag of glass that is all EF and some beautiful lenses that I love working with. And I'd have to replace most of those for the RF stuff or double buy so I could use it on the C200. And I was this close to getting the C500 Mark II. I put a deposit down.
Really?
I lost a major job and I couldn't justify it. I just couldn't justify it. And I have to say that a big capital expense like that would have seen me quite high and dry right now. That's for sure. I would not have had the residuals to keep head above water. But I think the challenge with Canon is how they're running two productions. You're running an EF mount production line.
Absolutely,
and now you're running the RF mount production line.
Yeah. It feels like they're butting, both sides are butting heads, really, and it's a shame. I think it's a while before I can come to terms with giving up, traditional SLR use and adopting mirrorless. I like I like everything about it, and I like the size of the cameras as well. They feel solid, and but if things carry on going the way they are, then I probably will have to.
Well, July should bring the R5, which is looking pretty tasty. Tasty. Mirrorless, and that'll be a bulky beast, that one.
Okay.
So you'll enjoy that one because it's massive and heavy, apparently.
Right. Okay. Well, there we go.
It'll just build up that. It's amazing when you grip people after using a heavy camera. It's like, oh, my hand. Sorry, just by accident. Right, Will. I think that's it for questions. There's detail to
Yeah.
styling is the key. That's another one. But I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for joining, and it has
Thanks
been
for having me.
it's been really interesting. It's been super long. It's 1 hour 24 minutes. So we've
Really?
trundled
Gosh,
on.
that's
We've trundled on
flow by.
beautifully. Yeah. Well, the thing is, we like what we do, so it's nice to just share it.
Yeah.
Although it's a bit of a boys' club when it comes down to it, but it is, this is not generally photography. Just like there's equality in photography. There's plenty of female photographers out there, amazing. Just thought I'd lay that down. Right. Okay. Before I trip up and say something even more stupid, we're gonna call it a day. Will, thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Thank you. Pleasure.
And I will. And we'll speak again soon. And maybe if we can come up with a narrative topic, if you're up for it, you can come back and we talk about something
Definitely
specific in more detail, and we talk maybe to sort of specific professional audiences as well, which would be quite cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
well, have a great night. Thank you very much indeed. See you soon.
Take care. See ya.